So, welcome to HOD podcast episode 2. My name is Cecilia Reinaldo, and I'm the CEO of Homeowners Direct, HOD.co, and I'm here with my right-hand man, Martin Altman, our commercial manager. Hi, Martin. How are you?
Hi, Cecilia. Good, thanks.
Good. So today in episode 2, we're going to talk about developers.
Yeah.
What's happening with the market, what consumers should expect, and what's happening on the B2B environment as well. So I'm going to ask you a few questions today. So let's start with the off-plan market. What is happening right now? What is your view, since you work with developers most of your time?
Yeah. As you mentioned, I do spend a lot of my time with the developers. And if you look at the industry in general, there is a lot of off-plan projects. There's lots handing over. There's lots of new stuff launching. You've got everything from the better affordable price range to mid-range to high-end. It all still exists in the Dubai market. It doesn't seem to have slowed down. If anything, it's gaining momentum. However, what it's also come about now is it seems that a lot of developers are all trying to fight for the same customers locally. Because let's face it, it's not like the population has grown extremely since all of these projects launched, and buyers are really spoiled for choice. So it's at the moment, it is very much a buyer's market and very competitive. And this is what we're seeing translated into the various payment plan options, very attractive options being offered by the developers. We're also starting to see, like, in terms of pricing, again, you get stuff that comes with, you can pick up a one bed at under 1 million now off plan, which would not have been heard of 4 or 5 years ago. And it's difficult times. It's difficult times for a lot of developers and for the local customers. And so you're seeing more push international. We're seeing some of the really large end developers already established offices overseas in multiple countries. These are what I would consider to be the innovators. They know what's happening locally. They are still competing for the local customers, but they're reaching further abroad.
Yeah, they understand they have to take the projects overseas, yeah.
Exactly. And it's the means is there, but I think everybody wants the international market. They're just not entirely sure about how to go about reaching the international market.
100%, yeah. And for those developers that are trying to attract customers from different markets, what markets you see that they are prioritizing?
Well, I mean, looking outward but closer to home, GCC is still predominantly where they will look, especially looking at Saudi.
Correct.
India has still been known from last year's reports to be the largest investors. But I feel that those markets are also becoming the first ones to be saturated because of the push. It's closer, it's familiar.
Yeah.
The markets that I'm seeing a lot of traction in, and where I think developers are very wise to go after them, is reaching into East Asia. So the Chinese market, of course, there's a lot of work in the UAE where they're working with China to make it easier for businesses, etc. Pushing up into Russia, I think, is a very good market to go into. Again, with what's going on in the UN, these guys do have money that they're looking to spend and to invest, and UAE has always been a holiday destination for them. So it would be wise to already play on that and piggy bank on what's already going on there. And the rest of Europe as well, and with UK also being a large investor over here. They've also, all of these guys tend to have a bit of like political unsettlement in their regions, and the UAE, for what it is known for like being there's no politics over here. So they feel it's a place that they can invest where they don't have to worry what's going to happen with the next election. It's a very nice, calm place to put your money. And with prices being what they are, it's becoming more and more attractive for international buyers as well.
So we've seen a big cycle when it comes to developers, right? Where obviously in the early 2000s, it was taking orders. People didn't even have a brochure, and they were signing up checks to a recession that hit everybody hard, because not just the laws were not necessarily in place to support the amount of customers and support the ecosystem itself. But now we are in a much robust situation where the law is in place, the procedures are in place, developers start to listen to what the consumer wants and start to create offering that so that they are selling more now than the actual off-plan market. They realize that people indeed don't have that 25-30%, if you include all the fees, to put down a property straight away. So they are obviously facilitating that payment plan as much as they can to obviously allure the consumer to buy off plan rather than buy something that is ready.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that again we've touched on in many conversations together is your understanding of why the consumers are going to off plan. I mean, you yourself have dealt a lot in off plan and resale markets. So, what is your further insights there as to why the off plan is really picking up over here?
I think it comes down to the mortgage cap. I think since the mortgage cap was put in place, where that would limit the buyer to put a deposit in terms of the value of the property, this obviously made a big spin on the process. If you think about any expat, they have the salaries, they have to pay school fees and everything else, including paying their rent or potentially the mortgage. That's a lot of money that needs to be on the table.
Yeah.
So the idea of having to put down 30%, 35% to own a home is something that a lot of people shy away because that money is just not there. So obviously we saw a reduction of price, and I think primarily is because, that's my opinion, I think primarily is the reason was the mortgage cap. So obviously developers understood that and realized, okay, if that buyer needs to pay 30% and he doesn't have that straight away, I need to create an environment of 2-3 years where I will construct the property, he'll pay me that 30% over a period of time, and he can pay the balance in mortgage when he's ready. So that's typically now you see that 30%, 70% construction payment plan as one of those most used type of offerings that developers are using.
Yeah.
And obviously developers that have had their brand well positioned over time, they will always win, and they always are the ones who report the higher numbers of sales. But the medium and small developers are, as you rightly said, trying to think outside the box and try to reach different markets, because if you do look at the statistics, international buyers represent a huge part of the cake, right?
True. And speaking of, the different developers, I mean, you've been consulting for a few developers in the areas. What are the difficulties you're finding internally that they're having to deal with?
Yeah, I think if you now start to look from a service point of view and how the developers, why are they selling, why they're not selling, I think a lot of them are still in the infancy of setting up the procedures and systems. Not just, you might have a great offering, but, if the call center is not doing a good job, if the marketing department is not utilizing the finance of the budget on the right place, if the lead is not well taken care of in the right time, this obviously affects your sales cycle. It doesn't really matter what you're selling, but if they are not really looking at that in a perfect, and they are not, the process is not syncing together, this obviously affects the ability to close deals. So I see now, like the real estate brokerage industry, developers now understanding that they need to improve their systems, not just from an offering to the consumer point of view, but improve their internal services, not just pre-sale, but post-sale as well. You need to take that client in a journey.
Yeah.
And a lot of them not necessarily do. But it's evolving. They are willing to learn, especially because also, we've been into a process where developers will not deal with brokers, to now developers fully depending on brokers and majority to sell their inventory. And now I see a movement where, hang on, I need to have my own sales organization. I need to have my own primary drive on this, because, brokers, they will like a product today, they will move to the next product the next day. Depends who's paying more and what's more interesting to their customers.
Yeah.
So developers are actively now expanding their own sales machine to ensure that they get continuity to the processes that they have established. So it's a evolving industry right now, and we see a lot of goodwill happening in terms of training, of trying to understand how to improve the services and how to reach those new buyers, because as you said from the beginning, the market is extremely saturated. So the companies who have built brand here, they tend to take the lion's share of the game.
Yeah.
But overseas, you have a bigger chance because people are starting the journey why they are in the current countries, and they don't know necessarily who are the bigger players, what the offering are. So you have an opportunity to build a relationship before they reach here. So that's where we are obviously doubling our attention to. Which brings me the question, we obviously focus on buyers from overseas. So talk a little bit about our offering and what's the feedback you're getting from the developers we're working with?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of our offering, we do work on an international scale to help buyers find leads from their target markets. So again, I've touched on the various target markets that we're seeing a lot of uptake in. But what we're able to do is go over to those markets, help them create a brand awareness so that they are known as a brand in those markets, regardless as to how large or how small. Just a simple presence there helps to inspire confidence and, create a kind of a relationship with the buyers. Then if they give us their chosen primary, secondary markets and say like, great, this is where we need to focus our leads from. We feel we have the most confidence closing in these markets. We come in and help them generate qualified leads from these markets. And I would like to emphasize on the qualified part.
Yeah, that's the absolutely
again,
important part.
You
Yeah.
find so much in the market where developers will say to me, we get qualified leads. And it's like, okay, define qualified. Oh yeah, the person filled out a form. I'm like, but that's not qualified. My Google autofill filled stuff out for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then by the time you reach the lead, it's like, oh no, I didn't fill that out, or I'm looking for a job. That's not a qualified lead. You can't, once somebody has contacted that lead, verified their contact details, checked if they have a budget in mind, how many bedrooms they're after, do they require bank finance, that is a qualified lead. And that backed up with a call recording, it just shows that this is a genuine person looking for something.
Genuine inquiry.
And
yeah.
you can't compare the two. So
Right.
we are going out there and providing these qualified leads on a global scale, qualified in the language that they come in from. So whether it's Russian, then it's by a Russian speaker, Arabic by Arabic speakers, India from Hindi speakers, etc. And we can provide that to developers. So they have empowered their sales team as much as possible to be able to close those customers or work on them to the point that they can get the customer to come in and close the deal.
Yeah.
So it's the brand awareness. It's the general we obviously will market the listings through our various social media channels. So they're doubling up on what I'm sure they're already doing internally. We're not saying we're here to replace or reinvent. We just further complement their existing efforts to help them drive and really maximize branding across the board, really.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely the reason that we obviously are developing our business model and is doing very well. I think we managed to create a situation where people understand that dealing with international markets, you need certain KPIs and you need certain also patience. I think everybody, everybody wants results on day one, but obviously there's no way you can operate in this market as a developer if you're not looking internationally. It's not an option anymore.
Yeah, that's a thing of the past. That's back in the day where people would land with big bags of money. When we first met, when people would be rocking up with bags of money. And those days, they're gone now. You have to go out and fight for your leads. And end of the day, it's one of those that everyone is, as I said, like they want it, but they don't know how to go about it. As with anything, the best thing to do is just start learning lessons, start improving your internal processes. This is where you're so good with your consulting, is being able to go in and bring some knowledge and experience and help them achieve the most out of it. So the industry needs to kind of start adopting that more, follow the bigger players who are doing it. It's, piggyback off them. If they're creating a brand awareness of Dubai and China, then why not put your properties, out there with them so that you can attract some of the buyers who may not be interested in those ticket prices.
And we can absolutely do that for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But I think that brings us to the end. So thank you all for listening. And I hope this podcast gave you some insight into what HOD can do with developers and what we are doing with developers in the market.
Absolutely.
And if you guys enjoyed the podcast, then please subscribe and leave us a comment if you have Apple Podcast. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.